Great. Okay. Oh, awesome. Excellent. Hello. I'm Lindsay from the Toronto Centre Green Party Federal EDA. Christine, did you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Christine Alwell. I'm the CEO of URGPC. I love saying that acronym. It's just like so funny. So we're like a downtown Toronto EDA. We're very cool. We have a great team. We fundraised a ton of money for Tim Grant's campaign. We tripled the vote in October. We're heading into provincial elections because, of course, we're very aligned with our URGPO. So, yeah, we're hopeful, but honestly, I think we're heading into a snap spring federal election. And I've been trying to get people's thinking about how do we respond and pivot to that. So that's an issue. And especially for Annemie Paul, who is in Bill Monroe's riding, Toronto Central, your riding.
Yep, our riding.
So what do we do if there's a by-election and Annemie's in that, or is she in the leader? Like, it's incomprehensible how quickly we're going to need to respond. So that's where I'm at.
And you're right, Christine. We have to be thinking of all of those things. Well, I'm Judy Green, and I am a leadership contestant for the Green Party of Canada. I am coming to you from a little tiny town with 300 people called Clementsport, Nova Scotia. It's in West Nova, where I ran for the first time last year, and we too tripled our vote for the first time ever in this area. We came in third. We came ahead of the NDP. And
wow,
yeah,
awesome.
And we won the student vote, which I am inordinate.
Oh my God,
amazing!
Nova Scotia.
Yeah, so we were really considering. I came into this with no previous political experience. I've run as a school trustee, but that's not at the same level at all. And it has been a learning experience the entire year. So I've basically been campaigning for over a year now because we started in June. So the things that I have learned, I could not have paid for this education. It's been phenomenal. And as we talked about before we started to come on camera here, just before I do that, I just want to say that Clementsport is in Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. And I'm blessed to be very close to El Sitkuk, which is a First Nations community in Bear River, and count many friends amongst the residents there. And I thank them every day for their knowledge and wisdom that they choose to share with me as I learn and grow how to be a good ally in their.
Yes, it's our number one priority.
It is, isn't it? It absolutely has to be. Yes. And as we were chatting about before the recording started, 2020 has been, okay, it's teaching us all resilience. It's teaching us how to pivot on the dime. And okay, so let's reprioritize and what resources do we have and how do we deploy them? And I think if anything, that's the lessons that are coming out of this year. And as you said, Bill Morneau just stepped down as finance minister and MP. And so that's leaving that riding open. Of course, Annemie Paul has run in that riding in the past, up against Bill Morneau in the last general election. Now, as far as I'm aware, our rules in the leadership contest are that we cannot be running or be nominated in a general election or a by-election during the leadership race unless authorized by the leadership contest committee.
So, oh dear.
So it's not
tricky.
It could be, but that their goal is to do what's best for the Green Party. And so I'm sure that they will deliberate the pros and cons and would make that determination should it come to that. Yes, I think we are looking at a spring election, a spring general election. Not sure if or slash when a by-election would be called, especially with the announcement today that Trudeau's proroguing Parliament until October.
Oh my God.
Which is
yes.
just, you know, I'm not that long in politics, and it seems hinky to me because, you know, they are on summer break until like the 21st of September anyway. The only reason that I can think of in my somewhat naive inexperience is that by proroguing Parliament means that they're not working on the investigation into wheat.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
committees end.
Exactly. So that's kind of why I'm thinking he's doing that. And you know, tactically from his perspective, you know, you use what powers, what levers you have. I don't think I think it's very disingenuous. But you know, what have we come to expect from this government, right?
I agree.
They're very self-serving, very partisan, very you know, invested in keeping power and not necessarily in doing what's right for the country, which is why a lot of us in the Green Party are in the Green Party and not in another party, because we are striving so hard to do politics differently and to really put people first. And I think we really need to hold ourselves to that. You know, we have some challenges going on within the party itself right now. And I think it's really, really important that we hold ourselves to those standards of doing politics differently, of really relying on our core principles. And it's sad to say that some people are struggling with that right now.
Lindsay, I don't know what you think, but I think Anna should run in the by-election rather than run for the leadership. Like, for me, personally, this is not EDA, CEO, URGPC talk, but I think she needs to call him and call out the Liberals directly as a Green Party candidate should there be a by-election soon. And the leadership, I don't know why, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that seems secondary to in her own writing with our own people in a by-election. I don't know what you think, but that's what I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a decision that she needs to make for all the reasons that are important to her. I know for myself, I would absolutely, if something like that was called here in West Nova, that's what I would do, is I would step down from the race.
Right? You gotta stand up for your riding.
Absolutely. And you know, even as leader, you need to be in Parliament. So whether you take it this step, what step you take first, right? And there's no guarantee for any of us that we will be the winner for the leadership. We have 9 strong candidates, and you know, we really have to look at representing our people in our riding, and that I think that there is a trust there that has to be fulfilled. Yes,
I think so.
Yeah, I think as an EDA, we're preparing for a variety of situations. In the end, getting prepared for whatever candidate ends up being nominated to run.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a super political answer, but it's,
but
it's the one that I have. It's the truth.
Well, you know, and that really feeds into a question we candidates often get, is that will we run in our own riding? If we were to win, would we be sticky and want to run only in our own riding, or would we be willing to run in another riding? And my answer has always been, I'm willing to run. I mean, my heart is here in West Nova, and I think if we had enough resources, you know, people who've been in politics longer than I have think that we could win it. But it's really up to the party as to where they think is going to be the best location. But even more importantly, there needs to be buy-in from the local EDA. I am not a big fan of parachuting high-profile candidates into EDAs and trampling on the hard work that's been done there and not having those important conversations with them. Respect respecting the work that they've done there. And if the EDA decides that they don't want a parachuted in candidate, then that is the EDA's decision as far as I'm concerned. I think that we really need to be respecting our volunteers that are working on the ground and building up, the trust and the relationships in our ridings. And we don't do that by parachuting in high-profile candidates.
Although I must say, I'm a fan and friend of Elizabeth's, and I didn't mind her parachuting into BC. Oh, come on. No, if that works, I'm open.
Yeah, exactly. But it needs to be not leaving hard feelings with the EDA that's being parachuted. It's got to
be done well. We get Lindsay to negotiate that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm just saying, it's okay.
Well, one of the things that got me into this leadership race was doing, a post-mortem on my own campaign and then reaching out to other candidates to see what their reactions or what their experiences were, what worked for them, what didn't. And it was interesting because there was a number of candidates that had, or a number of EDAs that had good candidates in place with a plan and a team and ready to go. And they were being told to hold off for a month or more, right up until the writ dropped, because there might have been somebody with a name recognition in their riding they were trying to convince them to run. And that actually happened in our riding as well. There was somebody that they were trying to convince to run. And, yes, when we're doing, our candidate searches, oftentimes it takes multiple times asking somebody if they want to run. But when you've got people who are prepared to run and who are good, solid candidates, then, it's disingenuous to them to continue trying to convince somebody who just keeps delaying, who really isn't interested in running.
Really?
So there's a balance there that we have to do. Yeah. And I really love the idea of encouraging contested nominations, because it gets people engaged and interested, and we end up with the best candidate. Right. And it's, we should really be looking for that. Sometimes I think we do stop short with our nomination process, saying, oh, we got somebody. Yes, thank you. We're so grateful. A name. Yes. Awesome. Oh, Gail just popped in here. We'll add her in. So, if we want to be a grown-up party, we have to move past that, just being thankful somebody's running, and really be trying to get a collection of candidates. For instance, in the riding just kind of west of me, they had a contested nomination with 4 candidates, which was the first time that had ever happened.
That's great.
In that riding, which was wonderful. And it was a really interesting process to go through and to see. I helped them a lot because I'm active provincially as well. As you said, we kind of wear 2 hats, many of us in the party do. And I was wanting to learn how all of that worked. And so I was working with them quite a bit, and our region for provincial overlaps that riding, as well as about 3/4 of my federal riding, or West Nova. So it was important for me to be involved in that. And it was very interesting. Yeah.
Speaking of not just your riding, could I ask you about my dear friend David Kuhn in New Brunswick?
Yes.
What's going on there? Are we going to be okay? Can you give me your perspective?
Well, with the SNAP provincial election just being called this week, it's been like bang, 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 with multiple things going on there. I think the New Brunswick Greens are ready for it. I already see signs up. They are already just ready to jump into gear. They kind of expected something to happen. I think that it caught a lot of other people by surprise with this, because talk about not being able to read the room. The average New Brunswick New Brunswicker is not all that thrilled about canvassing or door knocking. Like here in the Maritimes, we have our little maritime bubble, but still each of the provinces is working really, really hard to keep the numbers really low. And we take a lot of pride in that happening. and are very resentful on the ground of anybody who is seen to be taking chances that are unnecessary. And unfortunately, partisan politics is one of those things that's considered unnecessary right now, which makes fundraising a little bit of a challenge here. And even moving between provinces to do outdoor, socially distanced meet and greets. We did our first public event just last weekend, and it went quite well, but everybody wore masks. We had masks for sale, and we also had the non-medical disposable masks, but we had reusable ones there, and everybody was really good. Nobody even had to be asked, and we had a nurse actually taking all of their answering, getting them to answer all the questions like you do when you go to the dentist office or anything else. But it went over quite well because we were taking all those precautions. I think people are seeing that as being respectful of their health by doing that. We were not sure because we're into a municipal election this fall as well here in Nova Scotia. And I don't know if you know Richard Zrowski, but he is our shadow cabinet member for climate change federally. He ran in Halifax in the last election, but he is a councillor for HRM, Halifax Regional Municipality. He is running again, and he's reporting that as long as they're knocking on the door and then stepping back with masks on to have a conversation with people, that they are open to that. So I think
that's good to know.
It is good to know, but I think we really have to, you have to read your room and know what people are feeling and adapt to that and make sure that you're addressing their concerns, which is really what we need to be doing as politicians. So we can show we're doing that in COVID by being very respectful of distance and making sure that we're not putting them at risk. Because of course, moving from person to person, it would be so easy to pick something up and then share it all along the route, and none of us want that to happen. So it's really important that we're careful with that.
I think the Green Party Canada leadership should put out some statement on general guidelines on how to deal with this.
Oh, that's not a bad idea at all. Absolutely.
Because Lindsay, you're going to be in a by-election. You've got one. We've got new, I think we should get ahead of the game.
That's a really good idea, Christine. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Make a note of it. And share with everybody.
Right, because it's respectful.
It is, and that's one of the things that I wanted to do through, I have multiple goals during this leadership race. Number one is to become your new leader, but there's a whole lot of other goals, including making those connections within EDAs all across Canada and connecting people, creating pathways of communication that don't have to go up to head office and then back down, but that go directly across. So we have this network of communication all across Canada happening. Because another thing that really showed up on when I was talking to people in postmortem is that people felt like they were in silos. They were separated. They didn't have connections to anybody else that had a question. Somebody in their own group didn't have the answer, didn't have that institutional memory. They really didn't have a lot of options other than, their organizer. And I know our organizer was Marlene Wells, looks after multiple provinces. So, I think we only had 3 at the time or something like that. So we were very respectful of her time during the campaign because it was pretty crazy. But if we could put together something like a mentoring program, which is one of my pet projects, is getting lists of Greens who've been longtime Greens who have that institutional memory, may have worked on multiple campaigns, been involved in EDAs, and just would offer their expertise to another EDA. And so it could be EDA to EDA or a Green to an EDA, but have a formal mentorship program whereby the requirements are all set out and negotiated as to what would be required and how much time would be involved in that sort of thing. So everybody knew what to expect going in. But it would give us an opportunity really to share that institutional memory and not leave it or lose it. And this really comes to me from, you know, our First Nations neighbors who really revere the knowledge of their elders, and having that memory, that oral experience and stories handed down is a really honored thing to do in the community. And I think we need to look at our elders within the Green Party in much the same way, and provide a way in which that they can share their knowledge to the up-and-comers, those newly green, the youth and the young at heart.
Judy, what could we do to promote you to some sort of federal council, some special mentor, some liaison? What can we do to make sure we still hear from you regularly in the GPC?
That would be wonderful.
Well, tell us what you got.
Well,
you know, I'm happy to promote anything you've got in mind.
Well, I think that we actually need to expand what we expect from our deputy leaders, and where our leader may not have the time to be able to work with EDAs and connect with EDAs in the way that she or he would like. I know that Elizabeth would have liked to have done much more of that, but being in Parliament, you know, caring for the people in her riding, as well as being the go-to person for all the media, because the reality is that media only wants to speak with the leader. They're not really enamored of speaking to a deputy leader, but our deputy leaders really could be out there doing that outreach into those communities, helping to grow our leadership from within our EDAs, supporting EDAs, making sure that they're connected with the right resources that needs to be done, and kind of cheerleading the whole way.
well, in the follow-up that you're going to do to us, and, you know, thanking you for being with us and follow-up, can you add some sort of line to that? Like, let's have a follow-up plan for you.
Sure. I like that. I like how organized you are, Christine. I love it. You know, that sounds great. You know, and if we had a position within the party to do that, that would be great. But we do have the two, you know, the two deputy leadership that I have now. I just may not have been seeing it, but I don't see all the things that they're doing, and perhaps we need to really look at what those roles are, and so that we're utilizing those people much more effectively. I know that some of the leadership candidates are looking at putting together advisory boards in different areas, which I think is a fabulous idea. Another thing is that we really need to be supporting our people in shadow cabinet, and we need people who have that depth of knowledge. But I would love to see you know, committees for each of them that they can work with, that can be members from within the party that have the accreditation in that portfolio, who can be advising on you know, policy, advising on press releases and that sort of thing. And the reason for that, it comes to mind, some of the portfolios, you really need a real depth of knowledge. And for instance, in international affairs, you need to have such a deep understanding of the history of the conflicts, internal conflicts in different countries, to really understand what's going on when we have that big headline pop up. For instance, Venezuela, in Bolivia recently, and when just even this year when we had the aircraft go down in Iran, there, I think that if we have people who are experienced and have experience in those areas, they can bring a depth of knowledge to those press releases that a single person can't necessarily know everything. So, and it's also a way of growing leaders from within the party to grow them into future positions in shadow cabinet. and in other positions. I think that's one thing that we've not done well as a grassroots party, is growing our leadership within, and that means growing our leadership in our EDAs as well, but having the structures in place that allow us to do that. And right now we have nothing between these. We have our EDAs all scattered, 338 of them, which really aren't all EDAs. Some of them are associations, and some of them just come to life for an election and then go away again. We have our federal council, we have our shadow cabinet, and we have our staff. And the communication pathways between all of those organizations or all those bits of the party need to be really overhauled and supercharged, because right now that communication, if it goes in any direction, it's one direction, it's not two-way, and it needs to be. If we're a grassroots party, there needs to be an organized and effective way of funneling like 20,000 members' voices into distilling it into the message that needs to reach those decision makers within the party. And there are ways of doing that. There absolutely are, but we haven't even had anybody look at doing that. We just keep getting we don't have staff for that. That's not an effective answer. That's not an answer I'll accept, because we have people who are willing to volunteer. If we had 10% of our membership step forward to volunteer, we would have way more staff than any of the other parties. And so we just have to be smarter about it.
Agreed. One last question,
Sure.
and then I'll stop. We're heading into a convention.
Yes.
So if we want to do anything, we could call for it. We're heading into convention.
Well, yes and no. Because the physical convention has been canceled. We will not be meeting in person in PEI. It's just not going to be safe under COVID. Right. Our leaders will be announced from Ottawa. The decision will be announced on the 3rd of October. There is discussion right now because there is a group within the party that wants to push out our convention, which we have to legally in our bylaws have this year, because we have to have it every 2 years. So we only have to the end of the year this year, but we have 90 days notice that has to be put out before it, and we're running out of time to hit those deadlines. There is a way that we can do it by having, we have to have 50 people in person from 2 regions. So if we have that 50 people socially distanced as per the regulations, 25 from Ontario and 25 from Quebec, have it like in Hull or in Ottawa, then we would have that requirement of 25 from each of two regions, and then have other people Skyping in or Zooming in to be able to have a convention, kind of a hybrid convention in that way. That's what I would recommend that we do. Another thing that I would really love for us to do is not wait for once every 2 years to be working on policy. I think policy can be something we work on and have workshops on all the time. And it's a wonderful way of using our talents and building our depth of knowledge between elections and engaging more Greens. Is to be having policy workshops on an ongoing basis and have a pipeline through which policy can be developed, and then perhaps have a way of voting on policy more often than once every 2 years. That, of course, would require a change to our bylaws, but I think that there's a lot of merit behind that.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you. Judy.
You're welcome. I know we were so hoping to all get together and have a big splash in PEI, and I was so excited because it's close enough I can drive. And and unfortunately, I even had my friend had already offered up their spare room for us to stay, and we were just all set. So unfortunately, that will have to be delayed for now.
Have to do it another time.
That's right. That's right. Hello, Gail.
Hello, Judy.
Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. We're just gabbing We're just having questions and answers.
Well, I've been listening with interest. You know, I don't know you at all. I in fact, am one of these very old people that is a very new Green Party member.
Excellent.
And so I'm just learning. But your views on the party and the way in which, you know, various ideas about how to mobilize the membership, I think are wonderful. And I certainly hope that you manage to affect some of them. I would very much like to take you back just to politics, okay?
Sure.
And outside the party itself, I would like your views on what's going on in Ottawa, whether or not you think, you know, just your views on what has happened in the last few days.
Okay. Well, my understanding is that Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau have not been thinking in alignment for some time. They've been kind of at loggerheads. That's just the scuttlebutt. And there's been a lot of calls for both the resignation of Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau over the WE scandal. And it's kind of interesting that Bill Morneau has stepped down both as an MP and from his cabinet position, and is kind of sliding sideways into another position. So it's kind of a way of him saving face. With Chrystia Freeland now doing two roles, one as the finance minister and one as the deputy leader. So apparently the only way to break the glass ceiling is to take on two jobs as a woman. Doesn't surprise most of us.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, so it'll be interesting to see how that happens, although she was on the committee that voted in favor of the student program going through WE, so that's problematic. The WE program itself, there's a few things that are going on there. I think that many people were not aware of how it was structured, in that there was an aspect of it that was nonprofit and there was an aspect that was for-profit, and yet it was kind of all marketed as a nonprofit doing these great things for students. The program itself, I think, was deeply flawed in that why are we not encouraging, like just paying people a guaranteed livable income and encouraging volunteerism for the right reasons, not expecting people to go and volunteer for a rate less than minimum wage, which I think was very disingenuous. It actually discourages people from volunteering, and we have a serious deficit of volunteers. If you look at any of the service organizations across Canada, the average age now is well into the 50s, which is concerning, because it means that those organizations won't last for much longer, and there hasn't been as much uptake in volunteering. So it was really not understanding what volunteering is about, and I think it was just flawed from many different perspectives. And then you have both Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau really coming in from a perspective of financial privilege that is so high that they're so disconnected from the average Canadian that Bill Morneau forgot that he needed to write a check for $40-some thousand. Who's ever forgotten that they owed some 41,000? Like,
Oh my
seriously? God. Like, what level of financial privilege do you have to be that you forgot that? I think that that's just so disingenuous, and I think that that's really what Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau and many others, that's the world that they live in, that they write checks to make problems go away and don't really look at the ethics of what they're doing. So this has really opened that up for many people, for myself included. And so there's serious problems to go there. You know, on a level, I'm not entirely certain that Justin Trudeau was nefariously trying to do something. I think he just didn't see his own privilege. Like, I really think that this was just But it's that sort of same blunder over and over and over again, where he just doesn't see the ethics or how somebody else would view his actions as being unethical, because he just doesn't get it. And that's a problem.
It is a problem. That's one part of the culturally ingrained blindness. I don't know how many people in minorities or, you know, different races have said, you don't even see us.
No, exactly. And this is exactly the kind of the same sort of thing, but in terms of money. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
one
exactly.
other aspect, like I agree with you on most of that about we in particular. You know, to them it's chump change. It really. And like he was writing $50,000 checks every year to them, you know. So why would he think about owing them another 40? You know.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of blindness.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know whether or not this is a cover for what is going on about the we situation. But the media has been fed with this line that there's an actual disagreement on fiscal issues.
I don't believe it. I don't think it's true.
Well, there's a very interesting question, whether it is or not, Christine, and that is whether or not they're going to put some real money, and in other words, deficit spend, behind the recovery effort now, and make that a transition to a green and fair, right, economy. And they're certainly, I think they've locked themselves in on that position now because they've used it as the excuse here. And I don't know, I agree with you, Christine. I don't think it's probably sincere. But the problem is, if you use a line like that, where, you know, you've got 20,000, 100,000 people ready to sign a petition at the drop of a hat for that type of action, I think they're going to be locked in to some extent. I just appreciate your view on that.
Well, I think that there's more of an appetite for guaranteed livable income, or UBI, now more than ever, coming from across party lines. You know, we've had 50 senators put forward a petition. We've had multiple, you know, places that you could sign from very different organizations, including the latest that's from, and I can't remember her name, but she's an NDP MP, and Paul Manley has seconded it for this a UBI transition. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure on them to do that. And the financials are showing that they've paid more with CERB and it's you know, the other one where they're paying the wages for partially paying wages for employees than they would have had they implemented a UBI. So it's you know, the numbers are, more and more people are looking at it from a financial perspective. More and more people are coming on board, and there's a whole lot of pressure for it. And the reality is they have to kickstart this economy in some manner. And why not kickstart it into a green economy? You know, more and more, I mean, what was it? BP just announced that they're reducing their oil and gas production by 60%, and they're increasing clean energy by 40%. So you're going to see more and more oil and gas companies doing that. You have investors that are fleeing in droves the oil sands and the, you know, oil and gas in general. And so for those who are hanging on to it desperately, that it'll come back, they just don't, they've got rose-colored glasses on. It's not happening. You know, once the financiers who make a living by looking at the trends and where things are going. Once they start leaving in droves, and Mark Carney even stood up and said, this is not where you want to put your money, oil and gas, right? So once you have these kind of heavy hitters, Warren Buffett was another one. Not that I usually consider him an ally in anything. But he's another one that said, you know, this is not the place to put your money. So that's where the trend is. And smart people will start to look at that and go, okay, we need to see where we're going to land. And we have to make sure there's a soft landing for the workers in oil and gas, because these companies don't care. They'll leave and don't even care if they paid your last paycheck, you know, and most of them are international corporations. Some of them have countries like China owning a large portion, especially in the mining areas, industries. We have countries that own companies that are operating in our resource extraction. So we really have to provide that soft landing. And we've already worked out how we would do that with Mission Possible. You know, we have more jobs available for the workers and for the people who have lost their jobs because of COVID now as well, where they say 40% of the businesses that have gone away will not be coming back. You know, it's and what we look at, if you look at the jobs that are available now, they're not full-time jobs, they are part-time, and they still require you to have lots of like I was just looking on here in West Nova, and they want people with a teacher's degree to work 5 hours a day once a week, but you have to be a teacher with all of that training. It's not expected to expand into anything else. There's another one where even teaching English as a second language, you have to have the 2-year certificate, and it's a couple hours once a week. You know, they're asking for people who put time and energy and money into accreditation to work for a couple hours a week. That there's no way that that's supporting them. And so, you know, this whole thing with COVID really should have illustrated for us what a folly it is to make somebody's worth based on the job they do. Because if COVID showed us anything, it is the least amongst us, the front end people who bag your groceries and who clean the garbage away, who are the most critical in our society, and yet they are the least valued, working in the least valued jobs. You know, that should have been an eye-opener for us, right? And so having this value on a person by what they do is ludicrous. And especially in a job economy now that is so different than anything that we could have ever imagined and is in such flux. A UBI is the only way that we're going to make sure that people have roofs over their heads and food in their tummies, and that gives them that freedom to start looking at the businesses they can start that will be solutions to the problems that we have now, because you're not going to get that from big industry. You're only going to get that from people with an entrepreneurial mindset who are going to identify the problems and step in to fill that need. And they're not going to do that if they are struggling to put food on the table and a roof over their head. That they will take whatever jobs they can, and that entrepreneurial spirit, that potential will be lost to us.
I quite agree with everything that you said.
I think that's the opportunity with the proroguing of Parliament and the speech from the throne. I think Elizabeth and the other MPs should be saying, you can have our support if they will. Really focus on a couple of key factors that will ensure their support.
Yeah, I think that they've already, I think we've seen more working across party lines during COVID than we've ever seen before, and that's the feedback that I've gotten from Elizabeth and Paul, and it is something they continue to do. They are often asked for the background information for things like UBI and for guaranteed livable income, because we've done the research on it, and they freely give that information and guide the MPs that are coming to them and asking about it. And you may well be right that they are taking this time to really come out with something big, because where are they going to go from this? They can't just stop this support when the jobs are not there. And here in West Nova, we have like half the population is at or below the poverty line. And the vast majority of the jobs that are here are seasonal. They're in forestry, they're in fisheries, they're in tourism. And the people who normally work through the summer to get, you know, their hours for EI were getting served through the summer, which was fine for the summer, but it doesn't give them their hours for EI through the winter. So yeah. What are they going to be punished and left out on the side of a snowbank in the wintertime? Like, there has to be a better long-term solution here. And I think you know, we all know the research has been done over and over on you know, guaranteed livable income and how much better it is for society and all the positive spin-offs. And maybe we can keep our all fingers crossed that they are listening to that and they'll come out with a big surprise early Christmas present for us all and announce it.
I certainly hope that it comes to UBI, but Trudeau himself has been against that.
Yeah.
He thinks that just changing unemployment insurance is going, or beefing it up is going to help. And
no.
It's not because of the kind of work that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But no. What they're going to come out is a building retrofit program,
mm-hmm.
all likelihood, which is important.
It is.
Extremely important, but again, the number and variety of jobs that are involved there is not as great as already exist in you know, the economy.
No.
And some of those jobs should not exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it requires nudging.
Yeah.
I love to have more time to chat and to listen to your views, because they're very important to me, Judy. And
thank you. Thank you
ever so much.
Thank you. Well, you know, one of the things that they're saying is that, you know, COVID-19 and the job losses have kind of put women's rights back about 20 years because the vast majority of the jobs that are lost are jobs that are done by women. And because now we're looking at women having to make the decision to homeschool rather than putting their children into school where they're concerned for their safety. You know, it's just on and on and on. I feel like we've been fighting the same fights for so long, and I'm sure, Gail, you feel even more so. It's like, seriously, didn't we just fight that one? But here we are again. But it is, you know, we need to find something that's going to be flexible, that's going to support us all going into, you know, a new work environment where labor isn't, it isn't as important anymore because so much of it's going to be automated. You know, work isn't the same. So we really have to look at an economy that makes sure that people have the basic human you know, needs in a way that's not tied directly to working for somebody else. You know, I said to somebody the other day, because there's actually somebody who I'm a good friend of here who says, oh, well, you know, and they work with small businesses, and they're like, well, the small businesses, that they just can't get anybody to work for them. And I'm like, okay, so are people there to provide work for businesses, or is business and the economy there to serve the people? Like let's look at how we're looking at this, because, you know, you're angry with somebody because they don't want to go and work at McDonald's in the middle of a global pandemic. You know, perhaps look at the other reasons they don't want to work there, or they don't want to work at somewhere that and this is from a personal experience, they don't want to work somewhere where they've been told that it doesn't matter, you know, if they're not happy at their job because there's a dozen people waiting to take their job. You know, perhaps businesses need to start being partners. And I've owned 4 businesses. Perhaps businesses need to be partners with their employees and not having this adversarial attitude towards employees that they think that's their right to have people work for them for minimum wage and ask them to do all sorts of things that are not even, you know, allowed under the current laws. You know, let's be a little bit about our responsibilities here too, not just all about our rights.
Well, you're getting into some of the innards of capitalism here, dear.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know whether you can, some people say that in some places at some time, you know, in one odd corner perhaps of the odd county here or there were, you know, socially conscious businesses, but I haven't found that many.
No, and I think that the problem arises, because I'm also a business coach, and I think the problem arises when corporations became entities, when they became equal to human beings. And the corporation's sole purpose is to raise money for the shareholders, that there's no governance or no constraints on that growth. And we live in a finite planet. Why are we allowing anything to grow infinitely? It's like we have these little cancers all over the place. Now, that being said, not every corporation, not every business is acting in a predatory manner. I call it predatory because if you're earning a comfortable living and you're paying your people well and you're not raping and pillaging the land, I don't have a problem with that. However, if your profit is coming at the expense of your employees or the planet, yeah, we're gonna have words, because that's a predatory practice and it needs to stop. And I think our BC brethren did well in bringing in something called an E-Corp, which is kind of like a corporation with a conscience. So there is some legislation there. And I think that that's a role in government that we have not been playing, is being the conscience of these corporations, because without that, they will grow without stop. And that's one of the reasons I really love the model of the donut economic model, because it has that floor, that foundation of basic human rights that everybody, you know, want everybody to have food and shelter and you know, to be have clean water and all of that good stuff, and healthcare and education. And it has an outer boundary that prohibits growth that's beyond the capacity of the planet. It just makes sense. If we look at biomimicry, look at what's going on and how the planet and every other organism on the planet acts. It's in cycles. You know, its life and death is in cycles. Its whole process is in cycles. Why we as human beings thought we could make a linear, you know, economic model where we take in resources, use it, and spit it out as garbage the other end, and didn't connect it in any way. Why we thought we wouldn't get in trouble with that is beyond me. You know, it's really short-sighted, because that's exactly what's getting us into so many of the troubles that we have here on this planet.
Once again, I couldn't agree more. I think the only addendum I would make is that corporations aren't, you know, self-created entities. What a corporation is, what it must be, what it must do, what its limits are, what its rights are all defined by law.
They are, absolutely, absolutely.
So they are creatures that we have created in law, and therefore it is in law and through democratically created law that we have to create the boundaries for our donut economy, if you will.
I couldn't explain it better.
Not up to corporations.
That's right.
To politicians.
Absolutely,
That's
because
what that message is.
That's right, because they've shown that they're not going to do that. And so if we want balance in our society, then the politicians have to step up. And that's another reason that I would never consider running for the conservatives or the liberals, because they're totally corporate captured. You know, they have taken so much money from corporations in the past that and so many favors that they don't really even get to work or make the best decision, because they have so much favors that they have to are pressured by. And unfortunately, the NDP is in the same situation with unions. And that's very unfortunate. I don't have anything against unions, but there are good unions and there are bad unions. So we have to be none of this blind faith nonsense that gets us in trouble all over the place. So.
Well, I would argue that if governments had played a proper role, you know, unions arose to offset the sheer greed of corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So they're twin evils. They can be twin evils.
They can. Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the abdication of proper legislative responsibility by the government that all of this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against corporations and I'm not against unions.
Mm-hmm.
I am against politicians who won't stand up to them.
Absolutely. Well, it was interesting in the last election, the CBC did an interview with me, and it's so funny because the CBC rarely posts anything that I say, and you'd think they would because this one's a little radical. They asked me, what is the biggest political challenge faced today? And I said, lack of political will. Yeah. We know what we need to do, but the people in power will not do it. Yeah.
By the way, just a small addendum. I know I'm taking up too much of your time, but one of the institutions that has to be told what to do is it's the financial industry.
Mm-hmm.
We live in an era of finance capitalism,
yes,
and that includes central banks.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why the Bank of Canada cannot fund the government of Canada.
Absolutely, yeah.
It did it for 40 years until Trudeau Sr. and a few of the boys got together and decided to start borrowing from the commercial markets.
That's right.
It's fundamentally important. I think
it is, yeah.
That Mark Carney is one of the people, not only is he an environmentalist, as is his wife, and he's brought the only true environmentalism into central banking that there is, which is, you know, a lot, but not nearly enough. And but whenever somebody says, you can't pay for that, we can't afford you have to have politicians who are able to say, yes, we can. We've got the proof. We did it for years.
That's right. Exactly. You know, I was really a little bit skeptical too until I started reading about modern monetary policy and quantitative easing, and that the fact that we did that in 2008 and there was no upward pressure or on, you know, there wasn't inflation. Thank you. Yeah, there wasn't inflation. Which is what they're always concerned about. And certainly in the current situation with COVID, the inflationary factors are not there. So quantitative easing is what they should be doing. And instead of, as you said, borrowing from the central banks, they should be borrowing from the Bank of Canada, because there is actually the ability to create money in the Canadian bank by having the government buy Canadian bonds at a 0 interest rate and then forgiving those bonds in the future. And what that does is it just gets the money cycling in the environment. It's like a trickle-up economy, and that's what a guaranteed livable income does as well. And that's why I think why they did what they did with CERB, is to get money in the hands of people quickly, because that trickle-up economy is what will keep things going. The money that goes to the big oil and gas companies, they don't put it back into the economy. You know, that goes into paying interest on a bank, or it goes into offshore accounts. You know, it doesn't go back into the economy. And so we really have to look at that. There's a book called, I think it's called The Deficit Myth. I haven't quite read it yet. It's on my list.
I recommend it highly. Okay.
Excellent.
She's very American, and she's addressing the United States and the Federal Reserve. But the message is there, particularly for countries like Canada, who are sovereign and have their own currency.
Yeah, well, we're in a unique position for that.
Yes, it doesn't apply to every country. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to most countries in the European Union.
Speaking of yes, we can.
Mhm.
If you don't mind, I'm going to switch over to the Democratic National Convention. But Judy and Lindsay and Gail, I want to thank you for a stimulating evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Judy.
so much, Judy.
Absolutely.
Don't forget the follow-up. We'll definitely follow up.
Okay, that sounds great. We'll send you a follow-up of thoughts and send you a link to this recording as well.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, dear.
thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much.